In this video, I'm going to show you how you can use Dev Proxy to generate an OpenAPI spec from the request that it intercepts. And what I'm also going to show you is how Dev Proxy can integrate with a locally running language model to create really good descriptions and operation IDs from those intercepted requests and put them into the generated OpenAPI spec. Okay, so let's get started. Let's get into VS Code. So we need an API to call. So for this, we're going to use the JSON placeholder API. So it's public API, but doesn't provide an open API spec. But I've got a number of requests here. So basically the CRUD operations with a few GET requests as well that pass like a query string parameter or are getting a nested resource as well. So we've got a good range of different requests that we can send to generate our open API spec. Okay, so we need to create a configuration file for Dev Proxy first. So this configuration file is going to have, the behaviors that we want Dev Proxy to show. So if we add in the OpenAPI spec generator plugin, this is going to be the behavior that generates the spec for us. So I get a bit of info. Notice here that I can add a config section for this as well. So let's use the snippet for this one. And we've got a warning as well that this doesn't correspond, the config section doesn't correspond to a plugin. So we need to tell the plugin which config section it needs to use. So now that these are all wired up, this is good. And finally, we need to add URLs to watch because we need to tell Dev Proxy which requests to look out for. And we'll use a wildcard because we want all resources. Okay, so this is looking pretty good. So let's start Dev Proxy, use the start command. Okay, so Dev Proxy is running, and now what we need to do is we need to put Dev Proxy into recording mode. And recording mode is essentially the ability for Dev Proxy to track that request so that we can use it to generate the spec. So it just tracks it in memory, doesn't store it anywhere. Let's use the start recording command, and you can see that in the output that we've now got the recording status in there. So let's go back to our HTTP file and let's send our requests. So we can see we've got a request that has been passed through, and let's continue on and do the rest of the requests. All these are going to be tracked. Okay, that is good. And now what we need to do is just stop Dev Proxy, because if we stop Dev Proxy, it stops recording as well. Now, in the output, it actually told us that there was a file that was created, and we can see it here. So if we open this up, we can see we have now a OpenAPI spec for the requests. So we can see we've got all the different types that we passed in there. So we've got single posts, we've got the post resource with the gets as well. Got a post in there, creating comments. Really cool that all this has been generated by just sending the request and having Dev Proxy in the background. Now, one thing to note, and I mentioned this earlier, is the description, the operation IDs. We can see here, they're not very good. They're not very descriptive. So we can use a locally running language model to help us with this, to infer what the intent of the request is and provide a human readable description and operation ID for use in this OpenAPI spec. So let's go back to our Dev Proxy configuration and let's enable that. So we have a property called language model, and we can just enable this. Okay, so by default, we default to using Ollama, but you can use LM Studio if you like. And the model that we use is Llama 3.2 because through testing, we found that this one has been good for this particular purpose. But if you want to use a different model, different client, then you can come into here and you can change the configuration as well. So for example, LM Studio or Ollama. Ollama. Okay, so we'll save that configuration and let's start Dev Proxy again. So we're going to recording mode. And what we need to do as well is we need to make sure that we have Ollama running as well. So let's just make sure that the Llama 3.2 is running. Let's do hello world. Yeah, okay, that is working. That is great. Okay, so let's go back to our HTTP file and let's send the request through again. Okay, so this time let's just stop recording. We can see in the output, it's going to take a little bit longer this time because we're using the language model. We can see we've got a new file that's been created. So let's go take a look at that. So we can see here, perfect. So rather than let's put these side by side. Okay, so put these side by side and we can see the description on the right-hand side was before we used the language model, and the description on the left is when we used it. So perfect. Retrieve a post by its ID. That's pretty good. Update an existing blog post, which is update a post. What else have we got? Update a post. Yes, these are now much, much better, much more human readable to understand what this OpenAPI spec is. Okay, great. I've just shown you how you can use Dev Proxy and a locally running language model to generate really good OpenAPI specs just from sending the requests from your machine. No more manually creating these things. Super, super cool. If you want to learn more about Dev Proxy, go to aka.ms/devproxy, and thank you for watching.